be delighted this weekend. You'll be so glad you did.
Many Australians, especially country gardeners, are terrified of snakes and kill them on sight. They either shoot them or sever their heads with a sharp spade, probably not realising that they're in fact putting themselves at a much greater risk of being bitten by chasing the snake than if they simply ignored it. Like all fears and phobias, being terrified of snakes is based more on ignorance than cold, hard fact. People do die of snake bite in Australia, but it usually happens when they actually tread on a snake or take after one and try and kill it. There are lots of ways of discouraging snakes from coming into your garden, and there are strategies other than killing them.
Some snakes can go for 2 years without eating anything. Can you imagine going that long without eating anything?
John Woodland is a science communicator specialising in ecology, and he works for the CSIRO and the ACT, helping to teach children about snakes and other reptiles, hopefully dispelling some of the myths.
And remember before I asked you to feel your backbone? Well, this snake has about 150 vertebrae.
Of course, like all things that frighten us, there are lots of myths and legends and stories that surround snakes.
Can you see the top of the neck?
Yeah.
It goes right down to here, and that's how long a snake's tail is. It's not very long, is it? It's important to understand that snakes aren't going to chase you. We're much too big for them to eat us, so they're not really interested in coming up and biting us. Snakes are very, very slow moving. That means that a scared person can always run faster than a snake.
Now get out of here.
Probably the first thing not to do when you see a snake in the garden is to run after it and try to get rid of it or try to kill it, as that's how most people are bitten.
And whatever you do, don't do this at home. Always seek expert advice.
If you see a snake, probably the best thing to do is try keep an eye on it, keep, a safe distance within 10 metres from it. Send somebody back into the house that can contact Parks and Wildlife, and they'll put you in contact with the right people that can actually come out to your place and remove the snake. And that way there's no harm being done to the snake, which of course plays an important part in the ecology of the area. In the cases where people are unable to get in contact with Parks and Wildlife, probably the best thing to do is actually go inside, make yourself a cup of tea and forget about it, and 9 times out of 10 you'll never see that snake again.
Chooks attract snakes because mice and rats come after the grain, and they're a very important part of a snake's diet. Always put the chook pen well away from the house and try and keep the grain covered so the mice can't get at it. Compost heaps also attract mice and rats that come scavenging for the rotting kitchen scraps. Bury scraps deep in the pile and always try and have a hot, fast-burning heap because this will be less attractive to vermin. Retaining walls, rock gardens and dry stone walls that have lots of cracks and crevices provide hiding places for snakes. Pack the holes with dirt to prevent them from nesting. Don't leave a lot of rubbish lying around or piles of old bricks or timber, as these are hiding places for snakes. Keep the area around the house well mown and clear for good visibility, and avoid thickets of ground covers like ivy, which also provide cover for unwanted visitors.
Probably a good idea to familiarise yourself with the snakes in your particular region, and don't approach any snake, even if you think that it's non-venomous, because there has been a couple of cases where people have misidentified a snake and gone to remove it and only to be bitten. The most likely time for people to encounter snakes in their garden is probably around early spring, when the males are out and about looking for females, possible mates.
But if I saw one, I'll stand still, like a tree. They'll think I'm a tree.
Blue tongues are great to have in the garden because they feed on things that get into your garden and wreck it. For example, garden snails and things like that. They'll get in and they'll eat just about anything: crickets, cockroaches, all those sorts of things. So they're really good to have around the garden for that reason. They're completely harmless as long as you don't go up and sort of harass them. And they're just a real fascinating animal. And it actually works like a rain jacket.
Snakes are like all creatures in our environment, including sharks and spiders that have a very bad image. They have a right to exist, and they're a very important part of the balance of nature.
Just because an animal's not cute and cuddly, it doesn't mean that it's any less important to the environment.
It's also worth noting that they are protected. You're not supposed to harm them in any way, so instead of chasing them with a sharp spade, try instead to make your garden snake-proof and call for help if you see one nearby. Remember, it'll be more frightened of you than you should be of it.